So the market is in complete free fall at this stage. I mean, great earnings don't matter anymore. Huge deals don't matter anymore. Nothing matters except stocks going into the tank. But for those of you guys out there that are prepared, there are millions to be made as well. So we will discuss all of this today so you can be excited like I know I am, because I know exactly what will happen and what to do to make a lot of money in the end. That's why I'm so excited. So just make sure you like the video if you like getting the truth without the hype, because that's exactly what you're going to get today, guys. So I feel this is kind of easiest to tackle by answering the most requested questions that I hear from you guys out there and give you the exact strategy I'm using to deal with each one of those questions. It was kind of the best way to lay this out and kind of make it a little bit different than the normal, crash, this is what you do type videos to the moon or whatever the case is that's out there, or, into the gutter. Let's not get into any of that. Let's talk about those specific questions that you guys had. So number one, should I sell because it will only get worse? Well, nobody really knows what's going to happen, but you could very well be right. It's probably going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. But my question back to you is, you can do that, but what is your plan whenever you do that? I mean, can you really time the market, which is what you're actually trying to do? And I mean, if you sell, what is your entry point back into the stock after you sold it? Do you have that worked out yet? Do you know exactly what that number is? And since nobody can time it perfectly, how are you going to feel being down after you buy back in? Because that is probably exactly what is going to happen. What are your feelings going to be? Are you going to feel like you got it wrong? What if the news gets worse? What if they have a bad earnings call? Or what if any other potential things happen, kind of come out and the noise gets louder and then your stock goes lower in the short term? How are you going to feel about that? How are you going to deal with that? And then kind of on the flip side there, what if it runs back up before you back in? So basically you're like, hey, I want to wait. I'm going to wait till my stock drops. I don't know. I'm just picking an arbitrary number here, guys, for an example. I think it's going to drop 20%. That's great. But what happens if it only drops down to 15% and then runs back up before you buy in? Is it a bull trap? Is it Wall Street playing games? Is it natural mechanisms of the market before it makes its next big leg down? Or is it truly gain its footing again and it's going to head back up? What is your plan? What do you plan to do in that specific situation? How exactly are you going to feel if it's a long-term, high conviction play that you absolutely want in your portfolio 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever your timeline is there, and all of a sudden it comes back up on you, and let's just say some of the conditions and some of the things that are going on right now go away and the market starts to rally again. Then what are you going to do? You're going to FOMO back in? You're going to stick to that plan that you originally had there? These are the type questions that you have to have answers to if you're going to sell and then try to buy back in at a lower price. That is why timing the market is so incredibly hard and why it gets so many folks in trouble. And oh, by the way, I haven't even gotten into the tax piece of all this sort of stuff. What is your tax liability? I understand some of you guys are using tax advantaged accounts. Some of us are not. Some of us aren't even sure what our tax bill would be or what our liability would be or whether or not we have those type of accounts or not. But you have to account for that tax piece as well. So how to deal with this situation? No matter what you choose to do in this particular situation, you have to have a plan. I simply plan for everything ahead of time, and then I just simply execute after that. I already have a plan for if the stock runs up to a particular price, what I'm going to do. If it falls to a particular price, what I'm going to do, and everything in between. Everything is planned out, written down, so that way I can simply execute to my plan and not worry about anything else and not get into guessing games that inevitably you may win in the short term, but you're going to lose over the long run. So let me give you guys some examples here. We had members in my group that sold Palantir at now $120. $120, some of them in 100, some of them as close as like 124, something like that. I think was the best sell that I saw. But they did that because that was their plan. They didn't time anything. They didn't know anything. They simply had a plan that whenever the price got to a certain point in Palantir, whether that was now, like it did just a month or so ago, or it was 2 years from now, they were going to sell at that price and use that money to pay off their house in one example. Others were going to put a down payment on a house. Others use that money to pay off debts. Others in our group believe it's a $300 stock in the future, so they didn't sell anything because they want to buy more, and they just simply been DCAing like they've been doing from the start. The point being, every single one of those examples, every single one of those folks won. Every single one of those folks did the exact right thing, despite the fact they all did it differently and for different reasons, to include selling and actually adding more because they had a plan. And you win when you have a plan and you simply execute. You lose when you emotionally react to stock price movements, both up and down. It doesn't matter. When you react emotionally with FOMO or with fear, you make mistakes and you lose ultimately over the long run. And if you're serious about making a fortune and taking advantage of a market correction or a crash, if that's what this turns into, and you want to work directly with me to develop that plan, learn how to do evaluation, and avoiding critical mistakes that retail investors make over and over, make sure you take advantage of the March Madness sale and don't wait another day to do that, guys. I got it. We'll talk more about it at the end. It may not be right for you, but don't miss this opportunity. Number two, are you scared of the market falling a lot further? Well, that's another question that I hear all the time. This is just the beginning. This is just what's going to happen. We're just at the beginning stages of a giant crash or whatever the heck you want to call it out there. Honestly, I'm not scared one bit. I'm actually excited. And let me kind of explain to you guys why. I want cheaper prices on stocks because not only do cheaper prices mean I make a lot more money in the future than if prices are high, cheaper prices also means less risk. And it's something I don't hear talked about a lot, but it is absolutely critical to understand risk when you're investing. So when you understand that and you understand what risk actually is, it is critical to you buying low and avoiding the stupidity that comes with FOMO and when stocks run. And let me just kind of run through a few examples like we've been doing this entire time. Meta at $80 was a no-brainer, no-risk play in my opinion because all the risk had been taken out of the stock at that low of a price. Same exact thing with Palantir at $6. Palantir at $6 was a low-risk, no-brainer in my opinion as well. However, on the flip side, Palantir at $125 was a high-risk, low-reward play at that particular point in stage. Now, sometime in the future, $125 will be that low-risk play, but that's not today, and that's not anytime soon. But yet, I got told consistently in the comment section and a lot of other places by a lot of retail investors that Palantir was risky at $6, but a no-brainer at $100 plus. If you thought that way and you didn't understand risk and you bought into that narrative, then of course you are scared now instead of excited like I am. That makes perfect sense. I completely understand that mistake. So how do you deal with this? The way you deal with this is you understand what you own and how the market works. Even if you bought at that 120 mark on Palantir, for example, when you understand this and you understand how the market works, you are going to be just fine. On the flip side of all that, if you don't know what you own, you will be scared instead of excited. Even if you made a mistake, you're going to be scared instead of excited. And that's right, you can be excited even though you made a mistake. So how do you know what you own specifically? That right there was kind of the first piece we talked about here, and this will all tie together, I promise. You know what you own by doing your own due diligence, not watching YouTube videos, but doing actual due diligence on a stock, listening to those earnings calls, going through all the filings, combing through the financials, understanding what the future is, not speculative future, understanding what the company has guided to, understanding what Wall Street's expectations are for the next couple years, not 5 years, not 2040, not any of that other garbage that's out there, understanding what the company's doing fundamentally underneath, understanding how they're running their financials, understanding how well they're executing, understanding the goods and the bads with the stock, all those things that go into due diligence that most folks are not willing to do. When you do all those sorts of things, that is how you know what you own, because you're not following a media narrative. You're not following a YouTube narrative. You're not following this hype person over here, this pumper over here, whatever the case is. You know exactly what is going on with the stock fundamentally, because stocks always return to fair value in the end. And if you don't understand what you own in the first place, you won't even be willing to get out there and figure out what fair value is. Now, the second piece to that is doing an actual valuation. It is impossible. It is impossible, guys, I'm sorry, to know if something is overvalued or undervalued if you don't do a valuation on the stock. It is impossible. We teach all that in my group for those that want to take advantage of the sale, but that may not be right for you, and I completely understand, but you have to learn it elsewhere. Join somebody else's group, punch it into Google, put it up here in the YouTube search bar, find out how to do it and learn it. It's not as simple as, plug it in this formula, plug it in this spreadsheet, and you're good to go. That'll give you fair value all the time. Total fool's gold. That was the same exact crap that was going on in 2021 that told everybody that Tesla at $400 was cheap. And, Palantir at $40 back then was cheap. Don't fall for any of that sort of stuff. You have to put in the hard work and the manual work in order to get a good valuation. Doesn't matter where you learn it, but you have to know how to do it. Now, for those of you guys that bought a lot of the hype here at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and maybe let's just say you bought Palantir for $125, for example, then you should be excited as well because you get a chance to correct that mistake. You should want an extended time of the stock being down so you can buy more, because what matters is share count in the end. And the way you increase your share count a lot faster and end up owning a lot of the stock is by the stock going down in price. You should be cheering for Palantir to get down to 40 bucks or 30 bucks. I mean, I don't think we'll see those prices, but if we do, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And if we do, you should be excited, because then instead of having a few shares at $125 per share, you have a ton more shares, and maybe your average is $50, maybe it's $75, whatever the case is. The point being, the longer it stays down and the lower it goes, the less risky it is, and the better average you'll have, but more importantly, the more shares you will have. I would much rather have 10,000 shares at, I don't know, $50 per share, for example, than I would be the guy who has, 100 shares at a great $7 average. And he just never wanted to increase his average. So therefore he was, worried about it. Assuming you're buying great companies and not junk, like a lot of folks were buying in 2021, not junk. I'm talking about great companies here. A crash is perfect and covers all your mistakes and turns them into massive positives, guys. That was shown to us in 2021 up until this latest run-up, right? That is what happened. Mistakes were covered with those great companies because we got an extended period of downtime. And if you don't understand that every crash in the history of the stock market has been a golden opportunity to make a fortune, then you will miss out on yet another fortune. Number 3, what if we have a recession and everything gets worse? As we have seen in the past, guys, and we know it, it's never as bad as feared, or it doesn't happen at all. I mean, every single year there are recession predictions. Every single year. And they are wrong almost every single time. Now, to be very clear, it's not every time, because we do have recessions, but almost every single time the predictions are wrong, and it's been fool's gold chasing those. Recessions are a normal part of the business cycle and the economic cycle, and not necessarily something to be feared. Is a recession on the horizon? I have no idea, and I honestly don't freaking care either. That is not the point. It's not even something that's on my radar, and that's the reason why guys like Warren Buffett will say, if you have an economist on staff, you have one too many employees, meaning economists suck. They have nothing to do with your investing, and more importantly, sure, they eventually get it right, but they're right 1 out of every 8 times, 1 out of every 10 times. Who freaking cares? And more importantly, when we're talking about stock investing, it's not something to be feared. So how do you deal with this? You have to understand exactly what a recession means for stock investors over the long run. So we got a recession, right? In 2009, a big one, because the entire financial system melted down. So we had a massive, massive, massive recession. And it was not because of, tariff noise or this trade war or any of the other stuff that gets thrown around all the time as to why we're going to have this big bad inflation, or whatever, big bad recession. Never any of that sort of stuff. We literally saw the entire financial system melting down in real time. But what was the outcome for the investors who bought during that time? That's right, you guys, you got it. Fortunes were made. That's it. That's the bottom line with any of that sort of stuff. For the investors that just ignored all the recession noise and all the talks and, we're going to get a double dip recession and all those other things, which, by the way, there were people predicting recessions, in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. I mean, on and on and on and on. Well, guess what? We didn't get another recession until 2022. And oh, by the way, it was probably the smallest recession ever, but technically we did have one there. So what was the outcome for investors who bought in 2022? We just experienced it. And you guys guessed it, fortunes were made in the end on the back end of that little teeny tiny recession. Absolute fortunes were made. I mean, 100% gains in 2023. And then, oh, by the way, let's just double up our portfolios again in 2024, or 60% one year and 80% the next year, or 40% one year, 60% the one year. The point being, fortunes were made. Big recessions, small recessions, no recession, but a fear of a recession that sends market down means fortunes to be made. Those are the facts that you cannot deny them. That is exactly what the market has proven over and over and over again throughout the history of time. What you fear is exactly what you need to actually do what you want to do in the stock market, and that is make a fortune. That's why we're all investing. We all want to make tons and tons and tons of money, but yet we all fear the very thing that will have us making tons and tons and tons of money. And instead, we get all excited about things that absolutely have us losing money, like buying hype whenever stocks are way overvalued and then basically just, I don't know, valuations don't matter anymore, to the moon. All the other garbage that's out there, that's exactly what we fall for over and over and over again en masse. I see it repeatedly. Saw it in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. We even saw it at the beginning of this year. I mean, hey, look, you're stupid for not buying Palantir at 125. You're an idiot. It's going to be at 300 by the end of the year. I don't know. Maybe that'd be great. I'd be happy. I'd make a lot of money, but I'm very glad that I kind of laid off and used valuation as my guide and decided, hey, let me just go and set my price target low based upon my plan, based upon my valuation of the stock and everything else involved. And let's see if it gets there or not. I don't know if it will or it won't. Thankfully, I built out my position when it was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, $15 or so. That's where the bulk of my shares were bought. Somehow I'm a bad guy for doing that. I'm a terrible investor because I bought there instead of buying at 125. I don't know. Making fortunes in the market only happen if you ignore all the hype when the market is red hot and pull cash, just like we've been doing on this channel and in my group since last August. I took a lot of criticism for it. Some members left because of it, but all I did was sit around and pull cash because I didn't like the valuation of the stocks at that particular point in time. Not that they were terrible. Obviously, some of them got out of control. Obviously, I made, little buys here and there. Not a whole lot though. But then on the back end of all this, I have plenty of capital, and a lot of you guys have plenty of capital to deploy as the markets start to correct back down like they're doing right now. And even more importantly, you can prudently deploy that capital if you have a plan, if you do evaluation, and if you understand what you own like we just talked about. If you don't, then another opportunity to make a fortune will pass you by. You had a chance to make a fortune in 2016, 2020, 2022, and now maybe another opportunity. We don't know yet. It's too early in the game. We don't know yet. So don't waste it if it does indeed turn into another great opportunity like that by not having all this in place ahead of a crash or whatever the heck's going to happen. And if you're truly serious about taking advantage of this market correction or crash and you want to work directly with me, make sure you take advantage of the March Madness sale and don't wait another day to get your free courses, get your free coaching, be a part of the best 6, 7, and 8-figure Discord out there, be able to ask me questions anytime you want on our live Q&As, jump on our Discord. You can ask me questions there. I answer every single question. DM me, whatever the case is, doesn't matter. Check out the pinned comment, see if a membership's right for you, and take advantage of the sale before it ends. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market. And click here to see my exact plan for this market. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.